Ireland's economy has been booming in recent years thanks to big US tech companies such as Apple and Google. But now Donald Trump is warning this may not continue as he looks to put America first. Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, Ireland's low tax rates have helped attract big tech firms, bringing prosperity and jobs to the country. But President Trump is threatening to bring back the taxes paid by US companies abroad. So, what does that mean for Ireland?
For years, Ireland has been a favorite spot for big tech companies. Thanks to its low 12.5% tax rate, firms like Apple, Google and Facebook have set up huge offices here, bringing billions of euros into the country. But that money might not stay in Ireland for long. Trump says American companies should pay more taxes in the US instead of overseas.
We're going to bring thousands and thousands of businesses and trillions of dollars in wealth back to the good old USA. That's what we're going to be doing it, and doing it fast.
US investment in Ireland has grown over the past decade. The US is the biggest source of foreign direct investment in Ireland, contributing $700 billion in 2019, $574 billion in 2022, and $491 billion in 2023. But Trump's policies could put an end to this trend. So, could Trump's tax policy force big tech firms to rethink their presence in Ireland? And if that happens, what will it mean for Ireland's economy?
Well, let's bring in our guests. In Dublin, we have Frances Fitzgerald. She's a former member of the European Parliament from Ireland and former Taoiseach, or Deputy Prime Minister in Ireland, and current advisor to the G7 on equality. In Cork, in Ireland, we have Jonanthan Healy, who is an Irish broadcaster and journalist. And in Liverpool, Tonge is Professor of Politics at the University of Liverpool. You're all very welcome back to Roundtable. Jonanthan in Cork, I'll come to you first. St. Patrick's Day just around the corner. Is President Trump about to spoil the Irish party?
Well, one would have to think that after his pronouncements of recent days, there's a very real risk of that. And the Irish have somewhat of a unique access to the White House and have traditionally gone every single St. Patrick's Day. We're the only country in the world that has a standing invitation right into the heart of the American leadership. Now, that is something that has been cherished over the years. A bowl of shamrock has been handed over, and it has always been an opportunity for the Irish leader, the Taoiseach, to raise matters of joint concern. A lot of the time in recent years, that will have been around issues such as the undocumented Irish in the United States, those that have overstayed on their visa, and whether or not there would be some form of immunity for them going forward. The conversation will be very different this year because inevitably it will come to trade, it will come to tariffs, and it will come to deficits. And Ireland is very much in the crosshairs of the Trump administration because of the trade deficit that has been run up. Just to give you an insight into those figures, we have exported 72.6 billion euros worth of goods to the United States last year. By comparison, Ireland exported 88 billion goods to the EU. So America receives a lot from here. By comparison, we only bring in 22.5 billion, which puts us on a list that is very much at the center of President Trump's attention.
Frances, to you, I mean, Trump seems to be pretty fixated on all of these American companies who have moved base to Ireland, employing Irish people, paying taxes in Ireland. They're big revenue earners for the Irish government, aren't they?
Yes, they are. I mean, no doubt about that. We've a long established relationship with American companies who our foreign direct investment's been very strong. We have a very strong trading relationship with the USA. And of course, the other thing to remember is that we're the sixth largest investor of FDI in the United States, employing probably 111,000 people at least in the United States, but American companies here, 300,000 employed. We've had a long-standing relationship. And of course, it's also because we are the English-speaking member of the EU. It gives American companies, a base within the EU. As I say, English-speaking STEM graduates, plenty of opportunity to recruit here. So there's a lot of reasons why these American companies are in Ireland, and many of them are here for decades.
John, to you, from the outside looking in, how worried do you think the Irish government should be about everything Donald Trump has been saying?
Well, there's clearly cause for concern because Trump wants to target those American firms that are based in Ireland that he feels should be paying tax in their home nation. The fact is that Ireland's rate of corporation tax at 12.5% has really worked for Ireland. It's attracted firms like Google, it's attracted firms like Apple, and they are paying huge revenues, but to the Irish government. They supply a very substantial chunk of the Irish government's revenue. If you look globally, the average rate of corporation tax is around double that at 24%. If those companies were based in America, those American companies, they'd be paying 21% tax. So it's perfectly logical for them to be based in Dublin, Cork, wherever. The question will be, A, whether Trump can actually penalise them in the way that they hope, in the way that he hopes. I think the second question is whether there will be legal challenges to his attempts to insert tariffs. He's already reined in some of the language. I mean, you've got to remember, during his US presidential campaign, Trump was talking about 100% tariffs on Mexico, 60% tariffs on Canada. A lot of that has already been scaled down. China has already said that he's going to that they're going to challenge tariffs on them. And yes, Jonathan highlighted the trade deficit that America has with Ireland. But if America starts challenging the European Union and imposing tariffs, again, there'll be reciprocation. And Trump knows that. So I think that for all the bellicose rhetoric, I don't think the threat is quite as great as it is perceived. That said, there are potential significant challenges to the coffers of the Irish government here if that taxation policy of the Irish government at 12.5% corporation tax is challenged.
Jonathan, to you, Ireland is dealing with a president here who has no ancestral connection to Ireland. We're used to Joe Biden was very Irish and very proud of it. Barack Obama had Irish roots. Ronald Reagan, these were presidents who came, visited Ireland and celebrated their heritage. Do you think it's a problem that Trump has no connection to Ireland whatsoever, apart from a golf course in County Clare?
It is the first time, Enda, that an American president has been elected where the Irish haven't rushed to claim that president. That has happened with every other president right back to JFK and beyond, down to the fact that 10% of the American population can claim some form of Irish ancestry. There is no link. He has no real affection for the country in the same way, perhaps, as his predecessor did. But within his own party, the Republican Party, there is still a very strong Irish lobby. We saw that when the Brexit negotiations were going on and in relation to the Good Friday Agreement, the US government and the Republican Party really stepped up to support Irish interests there. However, there is a significant difference. Yes, President Trump has no direct connection to the country, but if he wants to take on Ireland's corporation tax, then he will be taking on not just Ireland, he has to take on the European Union. He cannot pick and choose who he decides to impose tariffs on, because Ireland does not trade in isolation. It trades as part of the European bloc. And Ireland could end up being the unhelpful focus here. If you look at what Peter Navarro, who is a key Trump advisor, has been saying in recent days, he said that they're going to start with the ones that run the biggest deficits. Ireland has risen on that particular table. Ireland is now just behind China, Mexico and Vietnam. We have overtaken Japan and Germany. So it doesn't really matter whether he wraps himself in the green of St. Patrick's Day. Based on what has been said so far, that shouldn't make much of a difference. Yet when he goes to make any changes, perhaps interfere in any way. It'll be interesting to see how that Irish lobby reacts on Capitol Hill.
Francis, to you, that's a very good point Jonathan makes about the European Union. Ireland is not in isolation here. Ireland is a member of a 27-state bloc. How important do you think EU membership now will be for Ireland with the Trump relationship?
I mean, it's always been critical. It continues to be critical. By the way, we have agreed with the OECD on the 15%, corporation tax, which America had agreed with as well. And Trump is saying he'll roll back on, which is a shame because that took a lot of discussion and negotiation. But if you think about the EU and the US, I mean, it's hard to believe 4.2 billion worth of goods and services, 4.2 billion are traded between the EU and the US daily. So, I mean, this is a huge trade and investment relationship between the EU and the USA. You start tampering with that with tariffs. You upset free trade. What are you going to do to the price, the costings in the United States for United States customers as well? I mean, I think John is right. This is more likely to be a kind of I don't know how dramatic it's going to be, but if you look at companies, I think what you might find is in the future, if companies are expanding, they've often expanded in the EU, you might find that there'll be some kind of relocation in relation to the expansion, and it'll be in the USA rather than in Ireland or the EU. That's a possibility. But I don't think you're going to see, dramatic movements back. So I think it's, there's a journey to go yet, but we can see how quickly corporations have given in DEI. I mean, if that's anything to go by, of course you'd be worried.
John, to you, we keep being told Trump is going to be a transactional president. What can a country like Ireland offer him?
Well, it's true that the smoozing sentimentality of the Biden era is over. And it is transactional Trump. And he will look at Ireland and he will look at the trade deficit that Jonathan and Francis have highlighted and think, well, yes, I need to take remedial action. I mean, when he says it's America first, it's not just America first. It's America first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. There's no country that registers as a most favored nation, with the possible exception of Israel, in terms of Donald Trump's world. I mean, there's a sort of myth developing on this side of the Irish Sea that somehow the UK might be that most favoured nation of Trump, and because he has some Scottish golfing links, that somehow we might be exempt. Plus the fact Trump is no great fan of the European Union, and though somehow he may bestow upon us a lighter tariff regime. That's not how Donald Trump works. You can go back to the 1980s to find the first speeches in which Donald Trump is eulogising the idea of tariffs to protect American business interests. So it's no surprise and no secret that that is what he wants to do. In his first term, he imposed or tried to impose swinging tariffs upon certain nations. The World Trade Organization stepped in and diluted some of those tariffs, but he's back for a second go in his second term, and he will attempt to get away with the largest possible tariffs that he thinks are feasible. But again, as Francis pointed out, there's a price to be paid for that. The EU is a huge, huge trading bloc. When it retaliates, that will put up prices for American consumers. And if you've got inflationary pressures within the United States, that puts a lot of domestic pressure upon Donald Trump. Now, you can say, well, does it matter to Trump? It's all about legacy. He's not seeking re-election unless he changes the US Constitution, which he wouldn't completely rule out of the question to try and get a third term. But nonetheless, I think that the ramifications of a tariff war will dawn upon the American regime in due course. But it's not that Ireland's being singled out for special treatment here. It's not that any country's being singled out for special treatment, with the exceptions of perhaps Canada and Mexico, where there's a border security issue as far as Donald Trump is concerned as well to go into the mix. It's just the fact that basically it's America number 1, 2, 3, and 4 for Donald Trump.
Jonathan, a lot of people outside of Ireland might be surprised to learn that Apple is the biggest taxpayer in Ireland. I mean, these American companies are putting in huge sums of cash into the Irish Treasury.
They are, and they have been here quite a long time. Apple is here in Cork. It has been based here in Cork since the 1980s, when Apple wasn't that big a company manufacturing the first generation of Macs. in an industrial estate on the north side of the city. It has stayed here throughout the good times. It's got 6,500 staff here right now and is investing in a new development at its European and Middle Eastern and Africa headquarters, which is based here in Ireland. We've also got these huge other names in the American corporate world. We've got Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, Roche, AbbVie, all of these companies that some of which will have begun in Europe and expanded to the US, most of which started in the US and expanded to Europe. And what is interesting, Enda, is that these companies do not plan and move on short-term cycles. We know from speaking to those who were involved on the Irish government side that every new factory, every new research and development facility is years in the lead-in. So all the operations that are here now started planning probably decades ago. So I'd imagine a lot of these American companies are looking at this and going, well, President Trump will be there for 4 years. We don't know what's going to be there after that. But in the meantime, we are not just servicing America from Ireland. We are servicing other markets, other huge significant markets, Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So therefore, they are going to have to continue a presence in those markets. The idea of bringing everything back, profits and all, to the United States is a folly in the international world. But that isn't what sells in America. What sells in America is, as John says, America first, second, and third.
Francis, we had a prominent English economist on the show last week, and I detected a fair bit of jealousy around Ireland's corporation tax and how the Irish government have managed this and how successful Ireland has made it. I mean, is that something you've picked up in all your years around Europe and talking to leaders in Brussels, that they're a bit envious of what we've done?
Yes, but some countries play games, and John will know this with a corporation tax. Sometimes they say their corporation tax is, X, and then you look into it, and France is an example of this. It's actually higher, I mean, it kind of, or lower, depending. I mean, I think obviously Ireland got in very early. We had still have a marvelous industrial development authority that does an amazing job. I mean, even this past year, 2024, we've had 234 new investments coming in from the USA, delivering a record level of R&D investment and committed to about 1.9 billion across 64 investments. So, it continues for the range of reasons I outlined.
John, we keep hearing your Chancellor in the UK, Rachel Reeves, talking about growth. A lot of UK regions would love to see the kind of growth Ireland has had off the back of American tech investment. So shouldn't the UK have been stepping up and kind of copying Ireland?
Yes, it probably should. But politically, it's very difficult to cut corporation tax when, Labour purported to be a party of the left and argued that it was a reward for businesses. Yeah, I think there was a strong case for cutting corporation tax. Palpably, it's worked for Ireland in an era when almost every single European country was running a major budget deficit. What happened in Ireland? The budget last year recorded a 25 billion euro surplus, almost unheard of across Europe. There was a reason why Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were re-elected, albeit with a reversal of party fortunes within that coalition. And the reason, basically, above all else, was the healthy state of the Irish economy. Yes, there is a baked-in vulnerability there, but the idea, going back to Jonathan's point, these are long-term planning decisions for American multinationals. They're not going to simply up sticks tomorrow, even if there was to be an increase in corporation tax within Ireland. They've taken the decision to locate. They like it. It's providing a quarter of the Irish workforce. It's providing a huge amount of finance for the Irish government. And it would be a long-term process. Now, what Donald Trump has said is he's going to raise taxes on those American multinationals that invest elsewhere, but we don't know the scale of that tax increase. He has the option, of course, of cutting taxes in his own country, if it's America first, from the 21% that some of the companies we've mentioned already would be paying there. Although that's easier said than done, because we assume that Donald Trump is this all-powerful person. He's got some major congressional battles to change American fiscal policy that we shouldn't underestimate. So whilst there is a long-term vulnerability for the Irish economy, true, And we should always be cautious, given the salutary lessons of the Celtic Tiger, although the reasons for that collapse in the Irish economy were rather different back in 2007-8. So there's always grounds for caution. But I think in the short term, what Donald Trump is threatening Ireland and other nations with, in particular the EU bloc, is more than survivable.
Just give us a flavour, Jonathan, of that surplus then in the budget in Ireland. What has been done with it, or what change is it going to make to Irish people's lives in 2025?
Well, we have had an unbelievably stable period in Irish political and economic existence, to the point at which the country has a huge amount of money at its disposal now. And the question is, what do we spend it on? We're almost cherry picking which infrastructural projects we want to build ahead of the others. Are we investing more in hospitals? We need to invest in housing here, because one of the problems with the growing economy is you need to have somewhere to house people. And that is a major ongoing headache for the Irish government as to how they can produce those houses. It is an unusual position, but a very lucky position that the Irish government has found itself in. We are not without our problems here, but at the same time, you also have something that is sitting in the background, which is 14 billion that the Irish government had to spend that went into that surplus last year, courtesy of a decision at European level regarding tax that was owed by Apple. So there are lots of governments right around the world, not to mention in Europe, that would be much happier in the Irish government's position. But all of that could change quite quickly depending on a social media pronouncement by a man who is incredibly unpredictable. Expecting friendship from America right now is a fool's errand. And I think that the Irish government, like every other government right around the world, will be watching their P's and Q's very closely so that they do not give grist to the Donald Trump mill, that they will be able to turn around to Ireland and say, you're not doing your part, which perhaps makes all those St. Patrick's Day visits by Irish ministers to American cities all the more important. Not the one in the White House, the one to the St. Patrick's Day parade in Illinois, the one to San Francisco, the one to Florida. Every one of those meetings is what Ireland does best, which is soft diplomacy. And if we can exert that soft diplomacy in the right way, perhaps Ireland might weather this storm. But again, it could change with a single tweet.
Francis, like Jonathan, I'm a child of 80s Ireland. And if we think back to those days, it was economic tumbleweed, let's be frank. Unemployment was rampant. Everyone was going to America, England, Australia, anywhere they could. I mean, clever decisions have changed Irish life forever.
Well, totally. And there's a couple of points about that. I mean, we have a very good safety net for people who become unemployed, for those who are ill, for those who are carers. We have, very good safety nets and services in place, and a lot of money, and it's a very progressive system as well. That's in place. That's really important. And we have incredibly high employment, which is great to see. But it is interesting that a growing economy brings its own challenges. We have huge infrastructural challenges with more and more people arriving in the country, a healthy birth rate. We have big challenges to meet in terms of housing, in terms of our health services, even education, school places. So, I mean, the problems of success are what Ireland is coping with at the moment, as well, of course, as the many advantages that you have when you have a surplus and you have money to invest. But you need a very strong system then to spend that money appropriately and quickly, efficiently and effectively. And we are having some difficulties in those areas. So there are two sides to the success. But I have to say to you, absolutely, would we prefer to be where we are now compared to those terrible times of emigration and the Celtic Tiger, disappearing and ghost estates? You can't find a house for sale hardly in Ireland now. We had ghost estates 12, 14 years ago. So we have seen great success. But, you can never take it for granted. And Trump is very unpredictable. You don't know what he's going to say from one day to the next. You don't know what he's going to do. And but nevertheless, we will build on the very strong ties that we've had with the USA. We've a lot of people who were voters in the United States with Irish ancestry, and we have a lot of political support. So we'll have to watch the space very carefully, Enda.
Thanks, Francis. John, final point, very briefly to you. I mean, whatever happens with Trump going forward with Ireland, a lot of European countries would really love to be in the Taoiseach's shoes.
Yeah, here in the UK, we look on enviously at Ireland's growth rate. We look on enviously at Ireland's budget surplus. And I think, yes, there are fears raised by the fact you've got the most isolationist, America First president that we've had since the Second World War. But the fact is, what you've got to remember is that whilst America is a very big and powerful country, there are more people live in the European Union. The European Union is a bigger trading bloc than is America. Ireland is a central part of that European Union trading bloc. So Ireland has the protection that it once didn't enjoy. Ireland has protection. The UK has less of that protection by virtue of the fact we've left the European Union. We've got to hope and pray that Donald Trump looks upon Britain a bit more kindly than other countries, whereas Ireland has got cast iron protection by being a member of that huge trading bloc. That's the big advantage that Ireland enjoys, and that's why I think the position is nowhere near as bad as the doommongers are portraying.
John, thank you. And to Francis in Dublin and Jonanthan Healy in Cork as well, thank you all so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Just search for Roundtable TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all of the team here, goodbye and thank you for watching.